David's time-conscious quest, mastering English in the margins of life. David was a man who knew the value of a schedule. His days were packed, early morning workouts, a demanding job as a marketing manager, evening meetings, and family time that he cherished. English, for all his ambition to master it, often felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. He had reached an intermediate level a few years ago, able to understand basic conversations and read simple articles, but he was stuck. His dream of conversing effortlessly with international clients, or fully enjoying an English movie without subtitles, seemed forever out of reach. "I just don't have enough time," he'd sigh, staring at his untouched English textbook late at night. "How can I possibly improve when I barely have time to sleep?" He had tried the typical approaches, signing up for intensive evening classes, but after 2 weeks, exhaustion won. He'd attempt to sit down for an hour of dedicated study, but life always seemed to get in the way. The cycle was frustratingly familiar: bursts of enthusiasm, followed by exhaustion, missed days, and ultimately a feeling of failure. His English vocabulary felt stagnant. His listening was a muddy blur when people spoke fast, and his tongue felt glued to the roof of his mouth whenever he tried to form a complex sentence. This was a classic dilemma for many language learners: the feeling that you need vast, uninterrupted blocks of time to make real progress. David believed this myth, and it was holding him back. The architect's insight: time is not found, it's made. The turning point came during a casual chat with his colleague, Mr. Lee, a soft-spoken architect from South Korea who spoke flawless English. David knew Mr. Lee had learned English later in life. "Mr. Lee," David began, "your English is incredible. How did you find the time? My days are so busy, I feel like I'm always too tired to study." Mr. Lee smiled kindly. "David, time is not something you find in big chunks. It's something you make in small moments. And it's not about how much time you have, but how consistently and effectively you use the time you do have." He explained that language learning, like building a house, isn't about a single grand effort. It's about laying one brick perfectly every single day. "Every minute counts," Mr. Lee advised. "And perseverance is simply the decision to lay that brick, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it, even when you think you're not seeing progress." This conversation was a revelation for David. He realized he needed to stop waiting for the perfect time and start maximizing the small, often wasted moments of his day. Tip 1. The power of dead time. Maximizing listening skills. David started by targeting his weakest skill: listening. He realized he had a lot of dead time, moments when his mind wasn't fully engaged, but his ears were free. Commute listening. His daily drive to work became a mini English classroom. Instead of music, he switched to podcasts. Start manageably. He didn't jump straight into fast-paced debates. He began with podcasts designed for intermediate learners, which often speak slower and use clearer pronunciation. Upgrade. Gradually. Once those felt comfortable, he moved to podcasts about his hobbies, like tech news or sports, or simple news summaries. This made it more engaging. Practical tip for listening. Don't aim to understand every word on the first listen, Mr. Lee had advised. Just try to get the main idea or the gist. For faster sections, don't panic. Let it wash over you. You can always rewind later if it's crucial. The rewind button is your friend. When he heard an interesting phrase or a tricky pronunciation, David would rewind 10 to 15 seconds and listen again, sometimes multiple times. This active engagement during passive time was a game changer. It showed him that consistency in even small, focused listening efforts builds comprehension over time. Chores and errands, washing dishes, cooking dinner, waiting in line at the supermarket, these became opportunities. He put on English audiobooks or listened to short YouTube videos on his phone. Even if he only half listened, his brain was still getting exposure to the rhythm and intonation of English. This passive exposure, accumulated over weeks, slowly made native speech feel less foreign. Tip 2. Unlocking the voice, speaking in short bursts. Speaking was his biggest fear. He felt immense pressure to be perfect. Mr. Lee had given him simple, yet powerful advice. Talk to yourself, out loud. This felt awkward at first, but David committed. While getting ready in the morning, making coffee, or walking alone, he'd narrate his actions or thoughts in English. Practical tip for speaking. Don't worry about perfect grammar or finding fancy words, Mr. Lee said. Just try to express your thoughts in complete sentences, even simple ones. Focus on getting the words out. Fluency comes from practice, not perfection. Why it works. This built muscle memory for his mouth and brain. It trained him to think directly in English, bypassing the mental translation step that slowed him down in real conversations. This required consistency and a willingness to feel a little silly. Micro-conversations. Online, David found language exchange apps that allowed short, spontaneous calls. Instead of scheduling long, intimidating sessions, he aimed for 10 to 15-minute chats with friendly native speakers. Practical tip for speaking. Choose partners who are also learning your language if possible, Mr. Lee suggested. They understand the struggle, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is a chance for your partner to correct you, and that's how you learn. The power of imperfection. David found that his partners were far more interested in clear communication than perfect grammar. This reduced his anxiety significantly. His perseverance in pushing past the initial awkwardness of these calls was crucial. Tip 3. Rapid vocabulary and grammar growth. Smart review. David realized that vocabulary and grammar didn't need separate, long study blocks. They could be integrated into his daily routines. Flashcards on the go. He downloaded a spaced repetition flashcard app, like Anki. During small breaks at work, waiting for an elevator, or standing in line, he'd review new words. Practical tip for vocabulary. Always learn words in context, Mr. Lee advised. When you hear a new word in a podcast, write down the whole sentence. That helps you remember how to use it, not just its meaning. Why it works. Spaced repetition meant he saw words just as he was about to forget them, maximizing memorization efficiency. This made his vocabulary learning incredibly time-efficient and consistent. Grammar in action. Instead of isolated grammar drills, David focused on noticing grammar points in his listening and reading. Practical tip for grammar. When you listen or read, pay attention to how native speakers use prepositions, verb tenses, and sentence structures, Mr. Lee said. If something sounds different, make a quick note and look it up later, but don't stop the flow of your listening or reading. Why it works. This made grammar learning less like a chore and more like a detective game. It was integrated into his daily English exposure, making it more natural and less time-consuming. The compounding effect. Time, perseverance, and progress. Months passed. David wasn't spending hours each day on English. He was spending disciplined, focused minutes. There were still days he felt tired, days when he questioned if it was all working. The progress wasn't always a dramatic leap. Sometimes it felt like an invisible, slow climb. This is where perseverance truly showed its power. He just kept showing up, doing his 15 minutes, listening on his commute, muttering to himself while making dinner. And then, it began to click. He found himself understanding more and more of the fast-paced news podcasts. The different accents, once a wall of noise, now sounded distinct, each with its own rhythm he could follow. During a work presentation, he listened intently as a speaker from Ireland explained a complex concept, and to his surprise, he didn't just get the main idea. He grasped the nuances, the speaker's subtle humor, and even their slightly sarcastic tone. His listening had transformed. His speaking, too, had changed. The hesitant pauses were shorter. The words flowed more naturally. He found himself confidently explaining his marketing strategies to a new international client, not just with correct grammar, but with appropriate idioms and a natural pace. He even managed to make a small joke, and when the client laughed, David felt a surge of triumph. He was communicating, truly communicating, not just translating. David realized that time wasn't the enemy, it was the raw material. And just like Mr. Lee's architectural designs, it was how he shaped that raw material, with consistency, smart strategies, and unwavering perseverance, that built his English proficiency brick by brick. His language journey wasn't about finding a magic shortcut. It was about honoring every single minute, every small effort, and trusting that the cumulative power of time, patiently and persistently applied, would ultimately unlock the door to his dreams.